Monster nests and deep labyrinths had always existed beneath the world, but when they overflowed, terror followed. From those dark paths came beasts with red eyes and endless hunger, crashing into the human lands like a curse made flesh. On the outskirts of the Burgrand Empire, chaos swallowed a quiet village in gray ash and smoke. People ran without direction, clutching loved ones and praying for a hero to stand between them and the monsters. A wolf monster stood before a trembling woman and her young daughter, its red eyes glowing with intent to kill. As the woman shielded the child with her body, steel flashed. In a single clean motion, the wolf was cut down. A knight stood there, calm and unmoved, softly inquiring if they were unharmed. Tears welled in their eyes as they nodded, looking up at Captain Ash of the Burgrand Empire Knight Order's 13th Squad. With a gentle but firm expression, he instructed them to run and leave the remaining danger to the knights. Ash turned and raised his voice, commanding his squad to advance. They moved at once, trained bodies cutting through fear. Another wolf rushed him, but Ash noticed the shift in air and twisted his blade into its neck. When a winged beast dived from above, Ash released his trapped sword and leapt aside. He rolled, grabbed an abandoned garden fork, and threw it with enough strength to pierce the bird and send it crashing into a house. Nearby, two of his teammates were surrounded. A black-haired boy with an axe and a red-haired girl with a spear were flagging under the growing numbers. Ash cut his way toward them, shouting a sharp reminder of their duty to protect the village. His words struck them with the weight of stone, returning the hope to their eyes. They signaled their renewed resolve and met the next rush head-on. By the time night finally settled, the ground was stained dark, and every knight stood exhausted but alive. Ash scanned the area, wondering if the trial had ended when a roar shook the air. A massive snake monster emerged from the shadows, breathing a stream of fire that grazed Ash's armor. The beast lunged, its jaws closing around him and smashing through a wall, but Ash forced the massive maw open with his bare arms, refusing to be swallowed. A cry cut through the chaos as the blonde archer, Ulka, called out his name. She released an arrow of blue energy that struck the snake's eye, forcing it to release him. Ash offered a brief word of thanks to her before leaping skyward. With light gathering along his blade, he descended in one decisive strike, splitting the monster in two. As the battlefield fell silent, the villagers emerged with cheers of disbelief. Word spread quickly of the 13th Squad's victory, and specifically of Captain Ash, who had defeated over 200 monsters alone. His strength earned him a new name whispered in awe, Ash the Annihilator. Inside the castle the following morning, the king rose from his throne. As Ash knelt, the king formally recognized his achievements and granted him the rank of Associate Noble. Ash walked out wearing his new badge, greeted by the boisterous praise of his teammates. Though clearly embarrassed, Ash expressed his gratitude before calmly revealing that he would soon be engaged. The announcement stunned the group, especially Ulka, who froze in place before breaking down. Ash explained the situation plainly, nodding that his fiancée was Lady Raffi of a prestigious house and that, as a new noble, refusal was not an option. For a moment, as laughter and drinks were shared, Ash believed his life was turning peaceful. But 3 years later, that belief shattered. Sitting across from his fiancée, Ash felt a heavy confusion as she coldly repeated that their engagement was over, dismissing him without mercy. Before he could recover, a noble atop a throne spoke with detached authority, declaring that Ash was officially expelled from the Knight Order and stripped of every position he held. Ash's fiancée turned away from him, the space between them suddenly wider than any battlefield. Panic broke through his shock, and he raised his voice, begging her to wait. He demanded to know what he had done wrong, his thoughts spilling out in a desperate flood. He reminded her of how he had meticulously changed himself to suit her tastes, how he had abandoned the habits he once relied on, and how every gift and effort had been solely for her sake. Each word felt heavier than the last, but none of them reached her. When she finally answered, her voice was cold and distant. She stated simply that she was tired of him and exhausted by the effort of dealing with a barbaric commoner. Her eyes showed no regret, only boredom. She continued, casually revealing a truth that shattered what remained of his heart. She had grown close to a gentleman from a count's family who offered her refinement and expensive gifts. Ash felt the ground drop beneath him. It was all for such a shallow reason. He refused to accept it, shouting that he truly loved her, but her response came like a physical blow. She called him repulsive and accused him of trying to use her noble lineage to climb the social ladder. Ash denied it at once, insisting it had been her own father who pushed for the engagement. But this only made things worse. She twisted his words into an insult, and declared she had nothing left to discuss with a commoner. With a sharp gesture, she summoned her bodyguards. Before Ash could react, rough hands grabbed him and began dragging him toward the door. He struggled, calling her name and begging for her to listen, but she refused to even look at him. As the door began to close, she spoke one final, absolute sentence. She never wished to see his face again. The door shut completely, sealing the end of everything he believed in. Moments later, Ash found himself walking through the busy town streets, surrounded by people who moved on with their lives as if nothing had happened. For a noble family to break an engagement so publicly was not just cruel, it was a declaration of total social exile. Before he could steady himself, two knights stepped into his path, ordering him to the station by command of his superior officer. Confusion followed him into a chamber where a noble sat waiting to deliver the final blow. Without hesitation, the man informed Ash that he was expelled from the knights. The sentence struck harder than any monster's blow. Ash demanded to know why, his voice shaking, but the man answered plainly that Ash was an eyesore to both his career and his love life. In that instant, the truth dawned on him. This man was Lady Raffi's new partner, Mike Librob, a noble who stood above him not by skill but by birth. Ash watched him closely, seeing the corruption clearly. Mike mocked him openly, admitting his hatred for commoners who gained noble rank and dismissing the dangerous monster subjugations as nothing special. Ash's chest tightened as he remembered the battles and the friends who had been ready to die. Rage surged through him, and he grabbed Mike by the collar, his fury breaking free. But Mike only smiled, warning Ash that if he pushed back, his friends would be the ones to suffer. Their positions and their futures could be erased just as easily. Ash's grip loosened. He understood then how absolute noble power truly was. Mike brushed himself off, remarking with satisfaction that Ash had finally learned the difference in their status. To a man like Mike, refinement mattered more than the grit of battle. As he spoke, he reached out and tore the badge from Ash's chest, dropping it to the floor and grinding it into the stone with his boot. With a final cold order, he told Ash to pack his bags and leave the capital by the end of the day. As Ash walked through the corridors, whispers followed him like ghosts. People glanced at his gray hair and murmured about rumors they had heard. He stopped at a room and announced himself to the royal swordsmith, explaining that he was there to return his knightly equipment. The swordsmith greeted him with a strange smile, calling him the disgraced knight. Confused, Ash asked what he meant, and the man laughed, saying that the whole castle already knew. Then came the vile lie. The swordsmith repeated a rumor that Ash had been dumped because he had forced his fiancée into perverted acts. Ash's mind went blank as the man described a disgusting, fabricated story where Ash had pressured Lady Raffi into humiliating roles, forcing Mike Librob to step in as a heroic savior. Ash felt sick to his stomach. He shouted in disbelief, demanding to know what kind of madness they were talking about. The rumor was false and groundless, yet it was being spoken as absolute truth. Ash stormed out of the castle, the weight of the betrayal crushing his chest. Outside, he slammed his fist into a stone wall, pain flaring through his hand as he shouted Mike's name in a fit of rage, accusing him of spreading such filth. All his hard work and sacrifices had been reduced to garbage in a single day. He stared at the setting sun, its light casting long shadows over the castle walls. Once he had looked at that sight with pride. Now it felt distant and unreachable. Everything he had built had vanished in an instant, stolen not by monsters, but by the malice of men. Just as the thought settled, a familiar voice shouted his name. He turned to see Ulrika Erdevane, his teammate and the only noble-born member of the 13th unit, running toward him in a panicked breath. She addressed him as her senior, her voice trembling as she asked if the rumors were true and if he was truly abandoning the knights. When Ash finally answered, his voice was calm but hollow, clarifying that it was more accurate to say he had been fired. The word hit her like a physical blow. She shouted in disbelief, demanding to know the reason and admitting that she still relied on his guidance. Ash spoke her name softly, memories rising unbidden. Ulrika had once been the unit's mascot, a noble girl who had cried frequently when she first joined. Over time, he had watched her grow stronger and steadier, learning the true meaning of standing beside others in battle. Those memories were cut short as her emotions began to spiral. In her confusion, she desperately asked that if he truly desired the things mentioned in the rumors, she would provide them happily. Ash snapped back instantly, his dormant anger breaking through his exhaustion. He denied the accusations completely, demanding to know if she had actually believed such lies. When she realized the truth, her expression collapsed into a mixture of relief and fear. She asked him what would become of the Janus unit if he were to leave. Her words pulled Ash back 3 years into the past. It had been a quiet evening after a battle, the squad resting after their training. He remembered the red-haired girl complaining that despite their life-and-death struggle, only Ash had received recognition. The black-haired boy had explained calmly that the Empire underestimated dungeon threats, viewing them as routine labor. Ash had answered them with conviction, stating that even if the nobles failed to understand, they had protected the village and earned the people's gratitude. He had suggested giving their unit a name so they would never forget that pride, an idea that was welcomed immediately. Ash remembered turning to the black-haired boy for suggestions, who proposed Janus, the name of an ancient god with two faces looking toward the past and the future. The red-haired girl had praised the choice, and Yoruka had smiled, nodding that it perfectly represented their fight against both humans and monsters. Ash had formally declared them the Janus unit that day. As the memory faded, he returned to the present and assured Yoruka that he would always consider himself part of that unit, no matter where his path led. When she asked what he planned to do next, Ash honestly admitted that he was tired of imperial nobles and intended to leave the country for foreign lands. Tears spilled down her face as she grabbed his hand and declared her intention to go with him. Ash rejected the idea immediately. He steadied her, patting her head gently while reminding her of her status as a noble and her duty to stay and protect their unit. After a moment, she nodded in painful understanding, asking only that he promise to write once he had settled. Ash agreed easily, knowing he would keep his word. Yoruka watched him leave, her eyes shining with unspoken feelings. The next day, Ash made his decision official by returning his quasi-noble title and abandoning the Hearts family name. From that moment on, he was simply Ash again. Instead of regret, he felt a strange lightness, as if a heavy chain had finally snapped. With a quiet breath, he told himself it was time to move on. Ash boarded a train bound for an unknown destination. As the rhythm of the tracks filled the silence, an old man entered the carriage and politely asked for a moment of his time. Ash looked up, studying the stranger's face with a calm but wary gaze, and asked the man to identify himself. Ash sat by the window of the magic train, watching the scenery rush past in a blur of color and light. As he remained lost in thought, an old man approached him quietly. Ash looked up, cautious but polite, and the man inquired if the magazine he held belonged to Ash. Realizing he had dropped it, Ash thanked him sincerely. The old man smiled warmly, asking if this was Ash's first time in the Empire. When Ash stiffened and asked how he had known, the man replied calmly that Ash had been staring at the scenery as if it were a new world. It was clear to him that Ash was not from the Rosebell Kingdom. Ash admitted the truth, explaining that in his home empire, only the wealthy could afford such travel. The two sat together as the journey continued. The old man laughed lightly, remarking that in the Rosebell Kingdom, magic trains were simply a normal way to travel. Ash did not hide his amazement. The old man began to explain that because the kingdom had long been exposed to dungeons and monsters, magic had become their only reliable answer. He described a world where miracles like creating fire or healing fatal wounds were everyday tools. Through relentless research, the kingdom had developed devices powered by magic stones taken from monsters, transforming the nation into a global superpower. Ash listened in silence, comparing it to his former home, which dismissed the danger of dungeons and lagged far behind in technology. An announcement soon echoed through the carriage, informing passengers of their arrival at the second dungeon city. The old man noted their arrival with a smile, while a second announcement reminded everyone to check their belongings before disembarking. After they exited the station, a servant bowed deeply to the old man, preparing a carriage. Only then did Ash realize the man's high status. Ash thanked him for the lessons, but the man brushed it off, properly welcoming Ash to the Rosebell Kingdom and wishing him an enjoyable stay. Left alone, Ash moved into a vast market filled with life. As he walked through the crowd, a woman suddenly rushed past and slammed into his shoulder. Before he could react, 3 men appeared in pursuit. They mocked her loudly, asking how long she intended to run. Her path was blocked, leaving her cornered as the men suggested buying her a drink so they could have some fun. The woman protested weakly, but one of the men sharply told her to stay quiet. Before things could escalate, Ash placed a heavy hand on the man's shoulder. He spoke coldly, suggesting the man was far too drunk. The goon spun around, shouting at Ash to get out of the way and insisting the woman's annoyance was none of his business. When Ash firmly told them to stop being persistent, the man threw a punch. Ash dodged with ease and countered with a powerful blow to the stomach, dropping the man instantly. The remaining men rushed him, but Ash weaved through their attacks, nodding their battle-hardened movements. He struck decisively, kicking one into a wall and dropping the last with a clean punch. As Ash rubbed his wrist, the red-haired goon drew a sword, swearing he would never forgive him. Before the man could strike, a commanding voice ordered them to stop. Royal knights arrived, led by a blond man who stated he could not stand by and watch an amateur try to fight a knight. With a confident smile, he added that this was especially true when the opponent was Ash Hartz, one of the Empire's strongest. Ash recognized him immediately as Baal Baron. The goons were arrested, and Ash recalled their many exchange matches, which stood at a perfectly even record. Later, the two sat in a hotel, raising drinks and a toast. Baal explained that he had rushed to the scene after the disturbance was reported, never expecting to find an old friend. When Baal asked why Ash was in the kingdom, Ash revealed everything: the betrayal, the rumors, and his expulsion. Baal frowned deeply, admitting the story made him angry on Ash's behalf. Baal then suggested that if Ash was starting over, he should become a dungeon hunter. Seeing Ash's uncertainty, he explained the profession: hunting monsters, extracting magic stones, and selling them to the guild for a comfortable living. He added that he would be personally happy to have a capable former knight like Ash in the field. Before Ash could respond, a knight burst into the room, shouting that there was an emergency and that monsters were flooding out of the dungeon. The air grew tense as their hearts raced. "A monster rampage?" Ash repeated, the weight of the term settling heavily in his chest. Beside them, a knight quickly explained the dire situation. Though the Knight Order had issued an emergency request to the Hunter Association, the uncertainty of how many hunters would arrive in time hung over them like a storm cloud. Baal fell silent, considering the risks, before stepping toward Ash and calling his name. As Ash looked at him with a questioning glance, Baal extended his hand with a calm smile, asking if Ash would fight alongside them. Ash understood the gravity of the request immediately. A rampage was a nightmare, monsters becoming unusually ferocious and flooding out of the dungeon to attack the city without restraint. They had to be crushed within the dark halls before they reached the streets. Ash closed his eyes for a brief second, then nodded firmly. He stated that he understood and agreed to the task, clashing his hand against Baal's. Baal admitted his genuine happiness to have him as an ally, to which Ash honestly replied that he would do his best not to be a hindrance. Their destination shifted to the Hunter Association, a massive building humming with tension. Inside, hunters moved with strained faces and raised voices. When a knight called out for an official named May to announce Baal's arrival, the chaos was evident. At a nearby desk, a man slammed his fist down, shouting for updates and demanding to know if they were deploying or not. Baal noted that the disorder was a testament to the severity of the threat. He stepped forward and addressed May directly, requesting a detailed briefing. May straightened immediately upon recognizing the captain. She explained that an abnormal outbreak of 300 blue apes had been confirmed on the 10th underground floor. Baal concluded at once that a rampage was imminent. When May noticed Ash and hesitated, asking for his identity, Baal introduced him as a friend who would be bolstering the defense line. May looked startled, pointing out that Ash lacked registration as either a knight or a hunter. Despite the skepticism of nearby hunters who questioned Ash's experience, Baal cut in calmly, personally vouching for Ash's skills. Though May remained uncertain, Baal urged the group to hurry to the dungeon. Upon arriving at the entrance of the second dungeon, Baal offered to lend Ash armor and a weapon. Ash thanked him and specified his preferences: light armor, consisting only of a chest piece and a longsword. As Baal handed him a blade, he explained it was a magic arm and asked if Ash was familiar with the technology. Drawing the sword carefully, Ash admitted it was his first time seeing a real one and asked how it differed from a conventional weapon. Baal explained the unique fusion of magic and steel, instructing Ash to place a magic stone into the guard's indentation. As Ash complied, energy surged from the hilt, wrapping the blade in a faint, powerful aura. Ash murmured in amazement as he swung the sword, nodding that such weapons would completely change the nature of combat. With preparations complete, Baal gave the order, and the team advanced into the dungeon's strata. As they reached the third stratum, Ash slowed his steps, staring in disbelief at the ceiling, which glowed with an artificial sun. He spoke aloud in wonder, questioning if the structure was artificially constructed, and noting the impossible height of the ceiling. Baal answered calmly that while dungeons were full of mysteries, their current task was strictly limited to monster slaying. Baal pointed toward a blocked passage, explaining that the stairs to the fourth stratum were sealed and that they would form a unit there. He was interrupted by the sound of something heavy slamming against the barrier. As cracks spread across the wood, Bale shouted a warning that the monsters had already arrived. A blonde knight yelled that the shutter was about to break, and Ash drew his humming magic blade. Bale glanced at him with a simple, "Let's go," to which Ash gave a firm affirmation. The shutter shattered, and a flood of blue apes, gorilla-like beasts with glowing red eyes, poured out. Bale shouted instructions that their weak point was the head, but Ash was already moving. As a monster leapt at him, Ash remarked that it was not fast enough and sliced the creature cleanly in half. Nearby hunters froze in shock at the display. Ash noted to himself that the blade felt like a hot knife through butter. Bale's strikes were equally deadly. He casually asked Ash if he liked the magic sword as they fought. Ash replied with a slight smile, nodding that with a weapon this sharp, they might not even need to aim for weak points. The two moved in a blur of precision. When a massive ape lunged at Bale, he dropped low to dodge and remarked that blue ape fur would fetch a high price among the nobility. Watching the carnage, a knight spoke in awe, identifying Ash as the Annihilator who had once slain 200 monsters alone. The hunters gasped, whispering that such power was hero class. The knight added that Ash was on par with the kingdom's 10 swords, explaining to the confused hunters that it was the highest possible title in the Knight Order. As the last of the apes fell, Ash spoke casually to Bale, nodding that he had clearly stepped up his game. Bale smiled and replied that Ash had also grown stronger over the past year. When silence finally returned to the hall, Ash lowered his sword and asked if it was over. Bale nodded, praising the group for their work. The other hunters stood in stunned silence, realizing that the two of them had essentially handled 300 monsters themselves. Later, back at the association, May looked at the report and shouted in shock at the results. Meanwhile, far away, a blonde-haired girl smiled to herself, her cheeks flushing red. With quiet affection, she whispered a promise to herself that she would see her senior again. At the Royal Knight headquarters, Ulka smiled softly while reading the letter in her hands. The familiar handwriting made her heart feel lighter, but as her eyes reached the end of the page, her expression stiffened and her grip tightened. She murmured to herself that the sender was now located in the Rosebell Kingdom's first dungeon city. Before she could dwell on it, a voice interrupted her, nodding that she seemed to be in a wonderful mood. Ulka reacted instantly, hiding the letter as a red-haired boy and another teammate stepped inside. The boy waved casually and asked what she was doing there. She smiled calmly, claiming she was simply training and asking what else she would be doing. The boy slumped onto a sofa with a tired sigh, complaining that everything had become unbearably dull since Ash disappeared. Ulka poured a glass of water and casually mentioned she had heard Ash was now a hunter in the Rosebell Kingdom. The red-haired boy sat up in shock, demanding to know her source. Ulka lifted her gaze, explaining that a letter had arrived at her house and that, from the sound of it, Ash was successfully hunting monsters. The boy wondered aloud if being a hunter actually paid well, and Ulka nodded, nodding that he didn't seem to be struggling financially. Another boy nearby chuckled, remarking that such a life was better than being nagged by their current superiors. He glanced at the red-haired boy, teasing him for looking down on others despite only being in the 13th squad. The boy didn't argue, musing that the job probably suited Ash better. When Ulka agreed, nodding that the nights had been calmer lately, the red-haired boy nearly choked on his water. He asked if she intended to chase after Ash, and Ulka answered without a hint of hesitation that she did. Stunned, the boy muttered that he was actually thinking of leaving the Knights himself to take over his family's business. The red-haired boy scoffed at the idea of a boring merchant life. His eyes lit up as he declared that he would become a hunter too, since working with Ash sounded like fun. Ulka shot him a sharp, possessive glare. He asked for Ash's specific location, and Ulka confirmed it was the first dungeon city. Eagerly, the boy suggested they go together, but Ulka shook her head, stating she needed to speak with her family first. The boy accepted this, declaring that the 13th squad was officially disbanded as of that day. The scene shifted to the Hunter Association in the first dungeon city. Ash approached the counter with a polite greeting, and the receptionist smiled brightly, assuming he was there to join the association. Internally, she was thrilled by his handsome appearance and his incredible recent performance. She gave him a playful wink and expressed how pleased they were to have him. Ash, slightly caught off guard, returned the sentiment. She slid some papers forward, asking him to fill out the registration form. A few minutes later, she returned with a small case. She apologized for the wait and presented him with his hunter license. Ash studied the card, remarking on how impressive it looked. She explained that he must show it to the staff whenever entering or exiting a dungeon so they could track who was inside. Ash nodded, surmising that this was how they managed search parties for those who didn't return. He gave a faint smile, commenting on how well-run the organization seemed and nodding that he could explore with peace of mind. The receptionist's tone turned official as she explained that all materials obtained during a hunt had to be submitted to the association. When Ash asked if this included things like blue ape claws, she confirmed it, adding a strict warning that skinning monsters for personal items was strictly prohibited. Ash remarked on the strictness of the rules, but she continued, explaining that hunters were not permitted to renounce their nationality. She advised against traveling whenever possible, and with the briefing concluded, Ash held his glowing hunter card with excitement, vowing to do his best. At the entrance of the first dungeon, a staff member asked if he was entering and requested his license for verification. As Ash stepped forward after being cleared, he collided with another person, causing his card to slip. A hand caught it before it hit the ground. A red-haired boy examined the card with a faint smile, calling Ash a rookie and pointing out his beginner mark. Ash's eyes narrowed in surprise. The boy leaned in and lowered his voice, warning the greenhorn to stay on the lower floors if he didn't want to die. Irritated, Ash wondered what the stranger's problem was before steadying himself. He stepped into the first level of the dungeon, murmuring that it was finally time to start his activities and nodding the quiet atmosphere. Nearby, he saw two young hunters by a pond. One excitedly announced he had found a magic stone, and Ash asked what they were doing. The boy grinned and explained they were slime fishing, demonstrating how they lured slimes out with vegetables to stab their cores. Ash watched closely, realizing how the process worked. The boys added that slimes were perfect for easy cash and suggested he try to reach the 10th level if he wanted a challenge. Ash thanked them sincerely for the advice, but one boy extended a hand, stating that information wasn't free. After Ash handed over some money, the boys grinned and wished him a good business. Ash moved on, musing that he had been hooked by the young entrepreneurs before sharpening his focus for the next level. Deep in the dungeon, however, the tone was far different. A different red-haired boy staggered back, his face pale with terror. He screamed, asking what the creatures were as monstrous figures closed in. His fellow hunters stood frozen in fear, completely surrounded. Ash stood on the 4th floor, mesmerized by the vast landscape stretching out before him. It was a complete grassland, radiating a beautiful natural vibe that felt at odds with the fact that he was several floors underground. He marveled at how the scenery could change so drastically, noting that even here, deep beneath the earth, a bright sky spanned overhead. As he looked through the long grass, he spotted creatures that looked like rabbits, small and cute, save for the single sharp horn protruding from their heads. Ash found them adorable until one caught his scent. It immediately dashed toward him with terrifying speed and lethal intent. Realizing that even something this cute was a monster, Ash beheaded it with a single, clean swoop. Feeling a brief spark of satisfaction at his first dungeon kill, he consulted his encyclopedia, learning that the creature was simply called a horned rabbit. He examined the loot, a small horn and a tiny magic stone, and tucked them into his bag. He marveled at the infinite nature of the bag, wondering about the magic that allowed it to hold so much. However, when he checked the market prices and realized that these materials were worth very little, he decided to quit the rabbit hunt and move deeper. He didn't realize until it was too late that a whole pack had encircled him. Suddenly, a stampede of rabbits was at his heels, and Ash found himself shouting for help as he sprinted away from the cute but deadly horde. His exploration continued with a few more mishaps, including a close call with a giant snake on the 9th floor. By the time he reached the 13th floor, Ash took a moment to reflect on how far he had come. He wondered if this level would be another grassland or a dark cave, but his thoughts were shattered by a human scream. He ran toward the sound and found the same group of adventurers who had mocked him at the entrance. They were surrounded by skeletal soldiers radiating a menacing crimson aura. Seeing an undead warrior about to strike a team member, Ash drew his sword. He activated its magic power and deflected the attack, saving the three and asking if they were unharmed. This was his first encounter with the undead. Not knowing their weakness, Ash kicked the skeleton squarely in the stomach, causing its bones to scatter across the floor. To his shock, the head remained active and the body began to pull itself back together. Ash wondered if the head was the weak point, as it had been with the blue apes, and crushed the skull into pieces. Yet he noticed a purplish glow emanating from the chest area. As the skeleton began to regenerate like an immortal phantom, the girl from the team shouted for him to take out the magic stone located in the chest. Now understanding the trick, Ash waited for the warrior to lunge. With one precise slash, he opened the ribcage, grabbed the glowing stone, and crushed it in his fist. Immediately, the skeletal warrior collapsed into dust. Armed with this knowledge, Ash moved like a flash of crimson light. He dashed between the remaining monsters, targeting their chests and shattering stones in mere seconds. When the dust settled, the lady of the group thanked him profusely for saving their lives. The red-haired boy who had mocked Ash earlier looked down in shame, sincerely apologizing and admitting that Ash was incredibly strong and fast. Ash brushed off the apology, inquiring instead about what had happened on the 13th floor. The group explained that the dungeon had been behaving strangely since the recent rampage. They had decided to venture deeper than usual, only to be ambushed by an endless stream of skeletons. Their teammate, Sammy, had been badly wounded while shielding the others. Ash knelt to check Sammy's wound, his expression darkening. He noted that the blade had hit a nerve and the bleeding was dangerously heavy. If they didn't act immediately, the man's life would be forfeit. But as Ash prepared to move him, a clattering sound filled the chamber. Reinforcements had arrived. Dozens of skeletal warriors emerged from the shadows, surrounding the group once more. Ash found himself in a dire dilemma, knowing the numbers were too high to protect a wounded man easily. Just as he was assessing the threat, the lady screamed a warning for him to watch out. Ash turned just in time to see a mass of skeletons jumping toward him. In a fit of cold rage, he braced his sword, ready to tear through the darkness. Ash took out his magic sword in an instant and started piercing the chests of the skeletal warriors. But they had some kind of insane energy, and even when a few of them were destroyed, more of them kept coming. Ash knew that he had to aim for the magic stones even more to defeat this menace. He told the adventurers to take the injured and run, and the lady agreed, starting to take Sammy out from the 10th floor. Meanwhile, Ash was constantly hacking and slashing the skeletal warriors like crazy, punching them, kicking them, and trying to break their magic stones. But there were too many of them, and Ash was not getting a clean shot at their magic stones like this. He realized that the situation was bad because they were completely surrounded. The boy wondered what he should do, and then he realized something. A flashback appeared in his mind. He remembered taking the sword and breastplate for the fight, and while he was wearing everything, the shopkeeper had given him something else as well. It was a smoke ball that released smoke made from ingredients taken from vicious monsters, which could drive away nearby monsters. The shopkeeper had been sure it would come in handy if Ash was ever in a pinch. Ash had wondered back then if it would actually work. Returning to the present, we see the boy frantically searching for the smoke ball and finding it inside a small bag. Knowing that he had to try it no matter what, he threw it toward the skeletons, breaking one of their jaws. The ball erupted into a large amount of smoke and debris. The lady from the team wondered if this thing was actually going to work, and Ash knew that if it did not, then they were done for. Even though the skeletal warriors had not disappeared yet, they stopped moving. The adventurer team was happy, thinking it was amazing, but Ash wondered if they had a few screws loose. He told them to save the celebration for later and to run while they still could. Finally, the boy and the others got out of the 13th floor. Ash made Sammy lie down on the floor as he was bleeding. While the teammates were taking care of themselves, Ash was sure that the skeletons were not going to chase them. He focused on Sammy's arm, deciding to apply first aid immediately. The man's face was turning pale, and Ash knew that at this rate, he would bleed to death. He told Sammy to open his mouth so he could pour the potion in. After the potion took effect, the bleeding slowed down a little. Ash suggested that they return to the surface immediately. They carried Sammy into the Adventurers Guild as Ash announced that they had a critically injured person and that people should call a doctor. The emergency personnel immediately came and took Sammy into their care. Ash then collapsed onto the sofa, knowing that he had done all he could and that the rest was up to the doctor. The teammates came closer to Ash, telling him that they would pay him a reward later and apologizing repeatedly. Ash told them that he did not need it because they were all in the same line of work and helping each other was a given. He told them not to worry about it at all. As the scene shifts to 1 hour later, an old doctor came out of the room. The teammates anxiously asked whether Sammy was all right. The doctor explained that if Sammy had not drunk the potion, he would have died, but he was now safe. The lady thanked God upon hearing this. However, the doctor added sadly that Sammy's right arm was beyond saving because it was too late. Even so, the teammates were happy that his life was saved. Even if he could no longer fight, he could still work as a porter. If Sammy decided to quit being a hunter, they would help him find a job he could do with one hand. As they discussed this, Ash looked at them and smiled, knowing that comrades were the best. He wondered how the Janus squad was doing and what they were up to now. A time skip of 1 month later appears. The boy was sitting inside a bar with a lot of food when someone wondered if Ash was not going to join a party after all. 2 muscular men wanted Ash to join their gathering of muscles group, but Ash insisted that he was doing pretty stable on his own right now. Still, they told him that Ash had been invited by multiple guilds, including the Golden Knight and others, even by their leaders. The Golden Knight was one of the top-tier parties just like them, but Ash did not like their leader, who was far too pretentious for his own good. The man admitted that even though the leader had skill, his mannerisms were annoying. He then informed Ash that on the 14th floor, a named creature was roaming around. Named creatures were rare monsters that appeared in the dungeon from time to time. This one wore full black armor and apparently had nothing above its neck. The named creature was the headless knight, Dullahan. Everyone was making a huge fuss about it because named monsters were extremely strong. The men warned Ash to be careful, saying that it did not sound like something he could handle while working solo. Suddenly, the sound of heels tapping echoed through the bar. Even the receptionists and drinkers were mesmerized as a stunning beauty entered. While the men were still trying to persuade Ash to join their group, the woman suddenly came up behind him, pressing herself against his head, covering his eyes, and asking who he was. Ash frantically turned around and realized that the voice belonged to none other than the noble and his old friend, Ulka. The lady smiled gently and told Ash that she had finally arrived, calling him her senior. As the scene shifts, we see that it is nighttime, and both Ash and Ulka are sitting together at a table. The boy wonders what the lady is doing in Roseville, while the lady thinks it is obvious that she came chasing after him. This flusters Ash as he wonders what happened to the night order. Ulka explains that she already quit, because there was no point in staying in the night order if Ash was not a part of it. The boy knows that Ulka is from a baron's family and is surprised that they would let her leave. But to Ash's utter shock, making him spit out his coffee, Ulka reveals that she cut ties with the baron completely. In a flashback, we see her father constantly shouting at her when she told him that she was coming to Roseville. The father wanted to beat Ash, but Ash could not believe that Ulka beat her father to a pulp instead and completely destroyed him. She had also decided to become a hunter and stay by Ash's side forever. This makes Ash blush, his face turning completely red. Ulka continues, saying that being a hunter and a wife at the same time is fine too. Now Ash starts stammering, unsure of what to say, while the girl encourages him to open up and ask her anything. On the other hand, Ash keeps thinking that if Ulka has feelings for him, then he would surely end up falling for her too. But he remembers his old engagement and becomes scared of being betrayed again. So Ash stops himself and tells her never mind. Ulka, however, is a sharp lady. She holds Ash's hand and calls him a poor thing, saying it is all because of that ugly and greedy gold digger that his heart is now scarred. Ash does not find the word gold digger appropriate coming from Ulka's mouth, but she tells him not to worry, promising to never leave him, even betting her life on it. Ash becomes more startled with every passing second, and Ulka does not stop there. She comes closer, sits on his lap, and says she is glad the gold digger did not get him. She promises that until he is ready to open up, she is willing to wait forever. This makes Ash extremely nervous. Even though he can slay multiple monsters, he is still human and wonders if Ulka is always this intense. The boy just wants to go back, telling her that he is going to the hotel now. Hearing this, Ulka immediately follows him. Ash wonders if she has found a place to stay, and she agrees, continuing to follow him all the way to the hotel. Even inside the hotel, they are going to the same floor. It does not end there because we find out that Ulka is actually inside Ash's room. She is blushing intensely, while Ash wonders why she is in the same room and why her luggage is already there. Ulka explains that she asked the Hunter Association where Ash was staying and beat him to it, thinking this would show him how serious she is. Suddenly, she turns around, grabs Ash by the neck with both hands, and promises that from now on, they are going to be together forever. She says this so close, and in such a seductive voice, that Ash wonders how he is going to control himself. Time passes and it is already morning. Inside the room, Ash is awake, unable to sleep, while Ulka is sleeping peacefully under a light blanket. Ash feels happy that he endured the night, praising his own self-control. But then Ulka wakes up, grabs his hand, and tells him that he held back quite well. She adds that she is in no rush and that she will eventually make him move on to her. All he has to do is wait. Ulka suddenly realizes that she needs to get her license and that they should go to the Hunter Association. Ash, completely drained, knows he is going to get insomnia at this rate. Inside the Hunter Association, every other man becomes jealous of Ash because Ulka, a beautiful lady, is clinging to him. Ash greets the receptionist and says good morning. May turns toward him and pleasantly returns the greeting, but then she notices Ulka. We learn that the two are already rivals. Ulka simply laughs and tells May that she wants to get her license. May angrily turns around and storms inside. Ash wonders what happened between them, and Ulka explains that since May seemed interested in him, she gave her a small warning. Soon after, May returns and slams Ulka's license card onto the counter. Ulka thanks her with a smile. May promises that she is not going to lose, and Ulka responds calmly, telling her to do whatever she wants. Ash is being crushed between the two and tries to change the topic. Ash tells Ulka that now that she has her license, they should head to the dungeon, as he wants to see what she can do. Ulka agrees, and they enter the dungeon together. Ash explains that this is the second dungeon, and that with her skills, going deeper should be fine. Ulka says that this is exactly what she has been waiting for. As the scene shifts, we see Ash and Ulka on the 10th floor, an area infested with blue apes. Ash tells Ulka to take them down herself. The blue apes spot her as she prepares her bow and arrow. She quickly loads a sharp arrow filled with magic power and releases it. Ash is shocked as Ulka fires multiple arrows in rapid succession without missing a single shot. He realizes that her rapid-fire ability is impressive, and her accuracy is top tier, showing that she has not gotten rusty at all and has actually improved. Suddenly, the blue apes rush toward her and pounce. Ash shouts for Ulka to switch to melee. She throws her bow aside, pulls a knife from her inventory, and slices the blue ape into thin pieces effortlessly. She then lands an impact strike straight onto the head of another blue ape. Ash realizes that her melee combat is flawless as well, meaning Ulka kept training hard even after he left. Ulka smiles once again and waves at her senior, signaling that she is done. As she pauses and looks cute, Ash realizes that she is a junior he can truly be proud of. Ash happily told Ulka that her skills had improved, and the girl wanted him to praise her more. They wondered if they should try descending to the 13th floor tomorrow, and the girl immediately agreed. But then another adventurer came running toward Ash, and the boy wondered why he looked so panicked. It was then that the adventurer frantically told Ash that Dullahan had appeared. The scene immediately shifts to the Hunter Association building, where a lady was shivering from head to toe, as if she were in shock. Receptionist May slowly told Ash that the woman had encountered the Dullahan while exploring the 14th floor. When Ash asked about the other members, May continued that the girl was the only survivor, and that more than 10 people had been killed by this named creature. Ash knelt down in front of the woman and asked her what had happened. She started blabbering broken sentences, saying that the creature's sword was sudden and then everyone was gone in an instant. Even though Ash could not piece everything together, he wondered what she was trying to say about the sword. Soon, he realized that she was not in a condition to talk properly. Ulka wondered what they should do, and May informed them that it was necessary to recover the bodies for burial and gather information about the Dullahan from the wounds. It would have been best if they could ask the survivor how the creature fought, but given her condition, that seemed unlikely. May explained that without understanding the creature's fighting style, they could not form a proper subjugation squad. Ash wondered if a named creature was really that strong. It was then revealed that 3 years ago, another named creature, the Red Ape, had appeared, and its subjugation required the full force of their top-ranking hunters. Now the association was ready to assemble a body recovery team, but they still needed escorts, hunters capable of diving into the 14th floor. The adventurer who brought the news earlier knew that if they ran into the Dullahan, they would be doomed unless they had a hunter with considerable skill. Ash remembered what had happened to Sammy and slowly decided something. Before anyone could ask, Ash stepped forward and said that if someone was needed to escort the body recovery team, he was ready to go. Everyone was shocked, and the scene shifted to the next day. Inside the second dungeon base camp, Ash stood in front of a giant map of the dungeon, pointing at a red mark. He explained that this was where the 14th floor party had been wiped out and that the body recovery team should focus on that location. Some wondered what they would do if they encountered the Dullahan. Ash told them to run immediately because they were not a subjugation squad and the mission took priority. Even so, some adventurers thought they might be able to defeat the named creature. Ash grew serious at their stupidity and reminded everyone that this was an extremely dangerous mission. He even told Ulka that she could wait at the inn if she wanted, but the girl refused, insisting that she was ready to fight and would not be a dead weight. Hearing this, Ash told her to calm down, and the group prepared to enter the dungeon. They entered the second dungeon and reached the 13th floor, which was filled with skeleton soldiers. Since body recovery was the priority, Ash ordered everyone to shatter the magic stones and keep moving. He asked Ulka if she could snipe the glowing stones. She immediately readied her bow and arrows, shooting precisely into the chests of the skeleton warriors. Every other adventurer was shocked by her accuracy, while Ulka happily flashed a peace sign. The adventurers thought they could leave the skeleton soldiers to Ulka and that it would be smooth sailing until they descended to the 14th floor. But everything changed when they heard a horrifying scream echoing from within the cave on the 13th floor. They rushed toward the sound, only to witness the escort team being slaughtered by the headless knight, Dullahan. The creature wore frantic black armor with no head, and a blue flame burned where its head should have been. It wielded a sword engulfed in flames, with a red cape hovering behind it from the force of explosions. One adventurer tried to block the creature's attack. Though he managed to block it at first, he watched in horror as his sword began to melt. Before he could even process what was happening, he was cut down, his lifeless body burning due to the fire effect of the blade. Dullahan stood there with skeletal warriors at his side. The adventurers wondered how the creature was on the 13th floor when it was supposed to be on the 14th. Even Ash was caught off guard. He stared at the weapon, realizing it was a blade wrapped in flames that melted swords and armor like candy. He wondered how anyone was supposed to fight something like that. Suddenly, the monster turned around, and they realized it had noticed them. As they began retreating, Ash saw that Dullahan was not chasing them. Instead, the creature raised its sword and pointed it at Ash. The stance looked to Ash like the etiquette of a duel between knights. He wondered if Dullahan was waiting for him to draw his sword. Ash remembered his battle with Bale and the thrill of facing a proud, powerful enemy where everything could end in a single strike. That feeling had long been forgotten while living as a hunter in the kingdom. As Ash began to smile and reached for his sword, Ulka shouted at him, reminding him that everyone's safety came first. Ash snapped back to reality and began retreating with the others while the creature remained standing there. The adventurers knew that Dullahan was an absurd monster and that anyone other than the Knight Order could not possibly defeat it. However, Ulka noticed that Ash had a strange expression on his face. Even while facing extreme danger, he was smiling. At that moment, Ash realized that even though he was shivering, and even though one wrong move could get him killed, he was smiling because deep down, he wanted to fight him. As the scene shifts, we get inside the hotel once again, where we see that Ulka was bathing while Ash was sitting on the bed, wondering about what had happened during the day. As the scene shifts to a flashback, we see that when Ash and everyone else returned, they reported to May, who was clearly scared, wondering how a named creature could wield a flame sword. The adventurers further explained that both the armor and the swords were completely shredded, and the escort team could not do anything. There was no way they could defeat something like that. May ordered everyone to give up on recovering the bodies. Another adventurer suggested gathering the Knight Order and having them take it down, but May knew that the Dullahan was only staying within the 13th stratum, and since there had been no civilian casualties, they could not call in the Knight's Order. Ash understood that they would have to handle it using only hunters. May then called out to Ash, asking if she could request him to lead the subjugation squad. Ash wondered if he could even do so, and Ulka immediately grabbed his right hand, telling him not to do it because she was scared. Ash turned toward May and asked if she could give him some time to think about it. May simply smiled and agreed. As the scene shifts back, we see Ulka stepping out of the bath in a beautiful night dress that complemented her curves. Ash called out to her, telling her that he needed to talk about something important. Both Ash and Ulka sat on the bed, and the lady asked what it was. Ash explained that he truly wanted to fight the Dullahan. Even though it was not a mission or an obligation, it was his own will. After saying this, he turned toward Ulka, about to say something more. Before he could finish, Ulka immediately covered his mouth with her hand. Ash was confused about what she was doing, but Ulka was furious. She knew what he was about to say, and it always ended the same way. She asked if Ash really thought she would not go with him. This hurt her deeply, because during the rampage in the Empire, Ash had said the same thing, that he might die, so the squad did not have to come along. Ulka declared that she was coming with him no matter what. Ash tried to justify his worries, but Ulka started lightly slapping his mouth, telling him that he was not going to lose to some fake knight. She reminded him that she had promised never to leave his side, no matter what. Now Ash was receiving what many would be jealous of, the legendary lap treatment. As Ash laid down, Ulka told him that instead of worrying, they should discuss what they would do after they won, because that would be more fun. Ash smiled and suggested that they could use the reward money to eat at a fancy place. Ulka agreed that delicious food was nice, but she wanted another reward from him as well. Ash asked what the reward was, but Ulka refused to explain. Still, Ash had a rough idea of what she wanted and agreed, making a promise to her. As they laughed together, the scene shifted to the next day. Ash was inside the shop once again, asking the shopkeeper about countermeasures against the flame sword. The shopkeeper explained that a thick shield might block it somewhat, but it would be too heavy and slow down the team's movements. Ash knew that the only option was to outmaneuver the creature with speed and repeated hit-and-run attacks, so he preferred to avoid heavy shields. The shopkeeper realized how tricky the mission was. Ulka also knew that both armor and swords would melt from the flames. Suddenly, the shopkeeper had an idea. If the shields and swords were going to melt anyway, then they would just have to accept that the equipment was disposable. Ash immediately caught on to the idea and realized that this was also a viable option. The scene then shifts to the 13th floor, where Ash and Ulka were traveling together. They soon found the Dullahan, still waiting at the same place as the day before. Ash wondered if the knight had been waiting for him. Looking closely at the named creature, Ash realized that the number of corpses had increased. He immediately took out several items from his bag and prepared himself, a pouch hanging at his side. He told Ulka to get ready, and both of them took their stances and attacked the knight together. Ash swung his sword while Ulka charged her arrows toward the enemy. The Dullahan immediately deflected the arrow attack and braced himself for Ash's powerful slash. It was as if the knight was tracing all of Ash's movements. When Ash unleashed a magical slash, the Dullahan countered it with his own strike. Ash realized that the knight was not activating the flames yet and was fighting purely with skill. Even without the flames, the fight was incredibly difficult. The armor and sword were heavy, and Ash was soon pinned down. Ulka immediately came to his rescue, firing an arrow to create distance between Ash and the knight, asking if Ash was all right. Ash wondered why the Dullahan was not using the flames, as if he was enjoying the duel instead of ending it. Ash found this interesting and drew another sword from his back, wondering if they should continue. In response, the Dullahan raised his sword again, pointing it straight forward, clearly challenging Ash to a duel. Ash mirrored the stance and finally lunged at the Dullahan, his body pulsating with blue energy. At the same time, the knight released a devilish aura around himself. As Ash clashed with the knight, he was somehow able to deflect the thrust of its huge sword. Dullahan was no joke to deal with, and the boy was continuously waiting for the flaming sword, but the knight was not doing so and showed no plan to activate it. Dullahan threw Ash away, sending him several meters back, but Ulka was there to back him up, getting ready with her bow. Surprisingly, Ash told her to wait, because he knew that Dullahan was not an ordinary monster. The way it swung its blade, parried, and locked swords were definitely the movements of a knight. The boy wondered if he should try it, and he took the attention pose, saluting while introducing himself as Ash, a former Imperial knight. Seeing this, Dullahan also took the attention pose and stood with its sword raised upward. Ash immediately realized that this was the Roosevelt Kingdom's knight's salute. One thing became clear in his mind. Since the creature responded to an Imperial salute, Dullahan must have once been a Kingdom knight. Ash called out to Ulka, telling her that he would take him one-on-one and that she should not interfere at all. Ash became serious, holding his sword while maintaining the attention pose, calling the creature by the name Dullahan. He thought it was a shame that he could not ask for the knight's real name, but he decided to make sure that the story of this knight would carry on. With full intent for a proper battle, Ash charged toward the creature. The first strike landed, leaving a scratch on Dullahan's armor. Ash realized how tough the knight was and knew he would have to keep striking until he broke through. He began unleashing heavy attacks, sending the monster several meters away from its stance. The armor started cracking slowly but surely, and Ash was relieved to see that Dullahan was not invincible. Seeing this, the knight also became serious. Dullahan slammed his sword into the ground and dragged it across the rocks, generating sparks that erupted into furious flames and engulfed the blade completely. Dullahan had finally returned to full power. Even Ulka was shocked to see the flaming sword. Ash smiled genuinely, even while nervous, knowing that the playtime was over and that this was where the real fight began. The knight charged forward with the flaming sword, thrusting it toward Ash. Ash barely dodged in time, but his armor caught fire and the flames started spreading. Without hesitation, Ash tore off the burning armor and threw it away. Dullahan did not stop and immediately prepared a second attack, the flames still raging on his sword. Ash tried to deflect the flaming blade with his own sword, but it melted instantly. As the knight charged up for a final slash, Ash threw his sword away. Ulka screamed in shock, but Ash smiled calmly. A massive thud echoed through the dungeon. A second sword appeared. Even the knight was surprised. Ash stood tall and told Dullahan that he had come prepared, with multiple swords. He pulled out a storage bag from his belt and showed it to the knight, explaining that it was a magic tool capable of holding a mountain of cargo despite its small size. Ash revealed several swords inside and formed a pile from them. He picked one up, wondering which would happen first, Dullahan burning through all his swords or Ash shattering the magic stone. He pulled out one sword, then another, preparing a dual-sword stance like Zorro. Ash charged forward with two swords. The knight slammed down with the flaming blade, melting one of Ash's swords instantly. Using that opening, Ash slashed Dullahan's armor with magic, startling the knight. Dullahan charged his flaming sword again and thrust it toward Ash's chest. Ash blocked it with the second sword but was sent flying backward once more. Maintaining distance, Ash retreated to the sword pile. He discarded the melted blade and counted 4 swords left. He grabbed one and hurled it forward using magic, launching it like a throwing dagger at insane speed. It was not enough. Dullahan summoned a wall of flames and deflected the attack. Only 3 swords remained. Ash picked up 2 and rushed forward again. The knight unleashed a massive flaming whip, shocking even Ash as he wondered how to counter it. A blazing wall surrounded Dullahan. Ulka watched in disbelief as Ash charged straight through the fire. Ash deflected the attack, but both swords melted completely. He retreated once more and grabbed the final sword. With everything on the line, Ash sprinted toward Dullahan for the final strike. The knight charged as well, swinging his flaming sword. This time, Ash was ready. He leapt through the firewall, vaulted over the headless knight, and shouted that he would end it now. With a single decisive thrust, he pierced straight through Dullahan's chest and shattered the magic stone within. The impact was so brutal that, along with having his magic stone shattered, Dullahan was thrown several meters away, yet he somehow managed to keep his balance. Seeing that the knight was still moving, Ash was thrown into confusion. He wondered if he had failed to completely shatter the magic stone, especially since he only had one sword left. Unsure of what to do next, Ash hesitated. Then the knight suddenly stopped. The flames around his sword faded, and he vanished for a moment, leaving the flaming sword on the ground. What Dullahan did next was something truly righteous. He swung his sword once and then signaled toward Ash using the hilt. Ash realized that the knight was offering him Dullahan's sword. Slowly, Ash stepped forward and gently grasped the hilt. Now the knight stood wide open, as if telling Ash to strike him down. Ash could not believe it. He wondered if Dullahan was truly asking him to finish it. Ash realized that the knight knew that if he were human, the last strike would have been fatal. Even though Ash did not want to accept it, the blood-pumping battle was now over. Ash bid farewell to the Black Knight, calling him a true knight in the truest sense. Without hesitation, he raised the flaming sword and slashed through Dullahan's chest. The flames vanished, the magic sword shattered completely, and the knight fell forever, leaving behind only a memory for Ash to carry. Completely exhausted, Ash could barely believe that everything was finally over. As the scene shifts to night, we see the inside of the Adventurers Guild. Everyone was shocked to learn that Dullahan had been defeated by none other than Ash himself, and that too without even Ulka's help. Ulka was happy, and together they presented the flaming sword and the recovered materials to the guild. The 2 muscular men from before were overjoyed, saying that if it was Ash, then it made sense. Ash told everyone to store the remaining armor pieces in the storage bag, but May stopped him. She instructed him to keep everything secured until the night order arrived and warned them not to lose even a single piece. May ordered others to contact Lord Bale and prepare the largest room available. Ash was stunned, realizing that the aftermath of the fight was more exhausting than the fight itself. Ulka felt the same. As the scene shifts, Bale arrived and greeted Ash, saying he knew Ash could do it without a doubt. Ash was shocked that Bale had come all this way just to inspect the materials. Ulka was confused about what was happening. Bale explained that named materials were extremely valuable research subjects and required verification from both the Night Order and the Adventurers Guild before submission. Ash realized how troublesome this was, but Bale brushed it off and asked to see the materials. The scene shifts to a large armor stand displaying the Black Knight's armor along with the flaming sword. Ash and a representative from the association examined it, confirming that it was indeed Dullahan's armor as described in the reports. Both the armor and sword were incredibly rare, the sword being a magic weapon engulfed in flames. May and the association member were stunned, wondering if the sword was truly magical. Ash asked what exactly a magic sword was. Bale explained that it was a weapon that did not require a magic stone and could unleash magical effects endlessly. Ash realized that this was straight out of a fairy tale. Discoveries like this in the kingdom's dungeon had now happened for the 5th time, making it a historic event. Bale told Ash that he could expect a letter of appreciation from the country and a handsome reward. Ash could hardly believe it. Bale then instructed both Ash and Ulka to write detailed reports of their battle with Dullahan, as the armor and sword would be submitted to the Research Institute for study. They were given forms to fill out. Ulka asked what the Research Institute was. Bale explained that it was a royal academic organization of the Roosevelt Kingdom dedicated to uncovering the mysteries of dungeons and magic, and responsible for developing magic tools and weapons. Suddenly, Bale asked Ash what the fight with Dullahan had been like. With a serious expression, Ash replied that Dullahan had once been a knight of the Roosevelt Kingdom. Bale agreed, nodding that the armor resembled ancient kingdom equipment, and wondered if it was possible for a dead human to become a monster. Ash smiled sadly and said that he wished he had learned the knight's name in his final moments. Bale asked if Dullahan had been strong. Ash answered honestly that he had been extraordinarily strong, a magnificent kingdom knight. May praised both Ash and Ulka for their efforts. Both Ash and Ulka were exhausted, realizing the ordeal had taken far longer than expected. Ulka noticed that it was already night. They decided to return to the hotel to rest, but before they could leave, the 2 muscular men and other adventurers gathered around them, insisting on celebrating. Unable to escape, Ash and Ulka found themselves seated in the hotel with plenty of food and drinks. Everyone cheered, celebrating the defeat of the named creature. One of the muscular men declared that Ash would now be known as Ash the Dullahan Destroyer. Ash thought it was better than being called an annihilator. The muscular man then asked if Ash had decided on a party name. Ash replied that it had already been decided long ago. He looked at Ulka, who smiled knowingly. Even the muscular men blushed, admiring Ulka's beauty. Together, Ash and Ulka introduced themselves as the Janus Squad. As the scene shifts, we see a train station where someone has just arrived. The person smiled happily, thinking that taking the train was not so bad since she arrived early. She looked around in awe at the sight of the bustling first-tier city. She was a former companion of the previous squad, confident that Ash and Ulka would be waiting for her and would be surprised to see her. The red-haired Millie was humming her songs, thinking about how she would become a hunter and make a killing with Ash, and Polka too, so she could drink the finest drinks and spend all the money she would have. She thought that would be the best life. With that thought, Millie entered the Hunter Association. Some punks who were barely adventurers stared at Millie with perverted eyes, thinking she was just a wannabe hunter and that they could have some fun with her. Millie ignored them and asked the receptionist if she had a moment, explaining that she was looking for a hunter named Ash who came from the Empire. The receptionist immediately told her that there was no one by that name here. Just then, Millie remembered what Ulka had told her about the location. That was when Millie realized that Ulka might have lied to her so she could be alone with Ash. Millie grew annoyed, thinking she would not let that yellow-haired girl ruin her billionaire plans. She immediately asked the receptionist if there were other hunter associations nearby. The receptionist told her there was one in the 2nd city to the west and another in the 3rd city to the north. Millie wondered which one it could be and decided to head to the closest one. But then she realized something and took out the cash she had left, wondering if it would be enough for a train ticket. The receptionist told her she did not have enough money. Millie became completely pissed off, wondering what she was supposed to do now. Just then the brats from earlier called out to her, saying that since she was short on cash, they could lend her some, if she gave them something in return. Before they could even finish the sentence, Millie sighed and punched the man who put his hands on her. The punch was so strong that he slammed through tables, destroying them. The other two adventurers were shocked, wondering how such a cute girl could be so strong. Millie now acted like a savage hunter, kicking the bastards away without hesitation. One was still standing, but she turned around and delivered a powerful upper kick, taking all three down in one go. One of them still tried to attack her, but Millie dodged at the last second and used his own momentum to kick him straight in the face, dislocating his jaw. She warned them that she was already pissed off and that they should beat it because they had no chance against her. The receptionist realized that Millie was an incredible fighter and told her that if she needed money, she should become a hunter. With her strength, she would be more than welcome. Millie liked the idea. She realized that if she became a hunter and earned some money, she could leave the place, make a fortune, and chase after Ash and the others. Meanwhile, with Ash's group, it was 2 days after the Dullahan subjugation. Ash was walking around with Ulka when they ran into Bale, who once again interrupted Ulka's alone time with Ash. Ash was happy to see his friend and asked what he was doing there. Bale explained that he was escorting Dullahan's armor and sword to the royal capital. Bale signaled Ash to come closer and whispered that they had found a fatting inscription on Dullahan's armor. It revealed that Dullahan had once been a member of the kingdom's Night Order who entered the dungeon long ago and never returned. Hearing this, Ash wondered if he too could become a monster if he died in a dungeon. Bale said there was no answer yet, as the reason monsters spawn had not been fully discovered. The Research Institute would look into it, and Dullahan's armor and sword would help with the research. Bale added that the reward from the capital would depend on the Institute's evaluation, and apart from that, the Hunter Association would also reward Ash for defeating Dullahan and preventing further casualties. Ash wondered if they should check with the Hunter Association, and Ulka immediately agreed. Inside, May happily announced that they had received a reward of 5 million. Ash realized that even if they split it, they would still get 2.5 million each. Ulka immediately started calculating, noting that one loaf of bread cost barely 100 rows, and now they had millions. May continued, saying that in recognition of their achievement, Ash and Ulka had been appointed exclusive hunters of the second dungeon city. Ash did not immediately realize how big of a deal this was, but May explained that it came with many benefits if they continued to take down monsters. Motivated, Ash wondered how things had escalated so quickly. As the scene shifts, we return to the hotel room. Ash was having a drink, wondering when and how he would ever spend all this money. Just then, the bathroom door opened, and Ulka stepped out, pressing herself against his back and calling out to him softly. She whispered, asking if Ash had forgotten about the rewards he still owed her. Ulka was blushing intensely, clearly excited, telling Ash to come to the bed, hinting at some workouts. Ash stood there shocked, his face red, wondering what was about to happen and whether he was ready for it. But Ash agreed, still blushing, and crawled onto the bed as they sat facing each other. Once again, Ulka grabbed the boy by the neck and made him lie down while she climbed on top, her face completely red. Ash could not bring himself to look into Ulka's eyes out of embarrassment and instead stared somewhere else. The lady then grabbed Ash's hands and pinned them down. Just as the boy's heart skipped a beat, Ulka calmly lay down on his arm, resting her head on it. She told him that from today onward they should sleep together and that Ash would lend her his arm as a pillow. Ash was mesmerized by the gesture, wondering if this was all the girl had wanted. Ulka teased him, asking if he was disappointed. She said that she would not mind anything done to her as long as it was Ash, but since she had promised to wait, she felt this was enough for now. She wondered if Ash felt disappointed by that. Ash smiled, pulled her closer, and told her that he appreciated this more. He said he liked this far better than forcing things. He confessed that Ulka was important to him and that he wanted to stay with her forever. Ulka happily agreed, telling him again and again that she would stay by his side and never leave him. As the scene shifts, we see that it is 1 week after the Dullahan subjugation. Ash and Ulka had begun their lives as hunters, slaying numerous skeletal warriors as the Janus squad. Ulka realized that they could now easily handle bone warriors on the 15th floor and wondered what the 16th floor might be like. Ash agreed and suggested that they take a quick look. When they finally arrived, the scenery was completely different from anything they had experienced before. The floor was a vast desert, with not a single blade of grass in sight. Ulka realized just how wide this dungeon floor was, and even though they were still inside a dungeon, it felt unbelievable. She remarked that dungeons truly were mysterious. Suddenly, a massive shadow appeared in front of them. Ash looked up to find the source and saw giant bird-like creatures screeching at their prey. One of the birds immediately dove down like a missile toward Ash. He drew his sword and slashed through the bird's neck in an instant. Enraged, the leader of the birds attacked with powerful wing slashes. Sharp feathers shot into the ground around Ash like needles. Then the feathers began glowing intensely and suddenly exploded. Ash barely managed to dodge, pushing himself back through the dust and debris. Ulka was confused, wondering what was happening and why only the feathers were exploding. Ash realized that the bird might be using magic to trigger the explosions. The bird grew even more furious when its prey survived. Ash moved in front of Ulka, telling her to run because the bird was going to attack again. Just then, a purple-haired girl suddenly called out to Ash, telling him he was wrong. This was their chance to attack. She moved like a flash, stepping on the subordinate birds midair as if they were platforms. Wearing sleek armor and wielding a fine sword, she slashed heavily at the leader bird. The purple-haired girl landed gracefully as the leader crashed to the ground, struggling to stay alive. Ash and Ulka were shocked. The girl then called out to her teammates, an archer, a paladin, and a magic user. Together, they attacked the remaining birds in perfect coordination, beheading them effortlessly, cutting them down like butter. Ash and Ulka watched in amazement at their teamwork. The purple-haired woman then turned toward Ash, clearly recognizing him, remarking that it had been a while. We learned that her name was Tanya. Suddenly, Tanya stepped into Ash's personal space and kissed him on the cheek. Ulka was completely shocked. Tanya casually told Ash that she would do anything for him and that it was no trouble at all. Ulka immediately interrupted, slapping Ash and demanding to know what he was doing. She stood protectively in front of him like an angry cat, glaring at the woman and wondering exactly who this person was.